everyone. Welcome to Switchblade Sisters Social Club, the true crime podcast where two friends exploit their worst fears for your entertainment.
You're welcome.
I'm Dee, a writer and podcaster.
And I'm Isla from Criminally Good Books, a true crime and crime fiction bookshop in York.
Follow us on all the socials.
Except for X, obviously.
Or have a look at our website, switchbladesisterssocialclub.com.
Check them out for all our latest episodes, events, deals, and other weird stuff.
Listeners' discretion advised.
Hi.
Hello.
Woo! I'm just excited because I'm going day drinking today. I should say exploring, touristing, probably in the Leamington Spa area. So we're recording in the morning ahead of my jolly jaunt, gallivanting.
Please go to the Spicy Librarian bookshop if you go to Leamington Spa area, because I really want to know about it.
I've been to Leamington Spa before to get a tattoo. This one of Lola. Keely Glitters.
Oh,
She's awesome.
Yeah.
That was partly off the back of our Inquisition because Linda submitted hers and I'd seen it before, obviously, Linda from the brewery market. And then it kept on popping up and then I didn't realize how close Leamington Spa is to me. It's about a 15-minute drive. So
this is the problem with like social media. When you look at anything, it's like pops up other things. Like I looked at a pair of glasses the other day on Instagram and that's all I've got is glasses frames. Then I looked at some menopause pills. Fucking hell. Every single feed, every second feed is like,
yeah.
What are you trying to sell me?
I know. It's crazy, isn't it? That's the algorithm for you. But apparently there's also another tattoo place called Ground Ink, I think, which is like tattoo and coffee shop. I was like, those are two things I love.
Oh God, Dee. Are you guys going to go there and come back with a tattoo same day? If you do day drinking, you will 100% come back if there's availability. I know what you're like.
Yeah, you're not
you
wrong.
You will plan the tattoo now.
I'm just going to text Sam. Tattoo? ? Let's see what he says. Tattoo today? ? Little one, I'll say. Little one?
I think you also have to like make it special. It has to be because of something.
Yeah, because I got a house.
Yeah.
Ahead of my cocktails and exploring, I'm going to tell you a case.
Okay, and then you're going to have like a little, exciting day of drinking cocktails after telling me something horrific. And then I don't have any cocktails.
You're going to do home renovations.
Yeah, I'm doing home renovations, to be honest. Yeah. Okay, fair enough.
Well, I mean, that's kind of exciting, getting a new bathroom.
Yeah, it is. I'm having like a whore's bath at the moment, or I will be.
Prison wash.
Okay, well, let me tell you this to distract you for a bit. How about that?
Fantastic.
This episode, I'm going to call it Murder in the Rainforest, Dom Phillips and Bruno Pereira. Does it ring any bells? I feel like you will remember it. It will trigger some memories. But like with a lot of these cases that happen in real time, I say, when it's like going on in our living memory,
yeah,
you lose track of it or you miss bits or you don't know how it sort of concluded. Chances are, if you've heard of it, you would appreciate a cohesive telling of the story. And you're not going to get that. You're going to get me telling you the story, but I'm going to do my best. So we're going to the Brazilian Amazon today. I haven't done a Brazilian case in a while. I did the Brazilian real life Dexter and the State Park Maniac, and both of those were in the Sao Paulo area. A chunk of my family live in the north of Brazil. And so this one is, I won't say closer because Brazil is massive. So it's probably no closer, but just in a different direction. But it's further north in the Amazon. It's also more recently than those other cases. This is the case of Dom Phillips, a British journalist, and Bruno Pereira, a Brazilian Indigenous rights activist, who disappeared on the 5th of June, 2022, near the Amazon region of Val do Javari. I'm going to tell you about the area first.
The Amazon, it just looks amazing. But what scares me is like the
millions of things that can kill you.
Yes, exactly.
So this is the map of Brazil. Sao Paulo Rio is
massive.
Yeah, Rio is here.
Mm-hmm.
Sao Paulo is where? Nearby. It's not that far. My family live up here. this little, they call it the shoulder, I think. And then we are all the way here in the east, in the west, even this region. And this whole heavily green area is the Amazon. It's bonkers how big it is. We're talking at the moment about Western Brazilian Amazon, which is along the border of Peru. But that whole region is one of the most remote and least accessible regions in the world. It covers the area we are talking about, the Amazon, covers 85,000 kilometers squared, which is larger than Ireland. This is just a small part of the Amazon. It's just the area we are talking about today. Further north, dense rainforest, there's vast river system, and there's very minimal infrastructure, which is what makes it so remote and hard to access. Yeah. It's also home of the highest concentration of, this is a term that you'll get familiar with, uncontacted tribes on Earth. So these uncontacted tribes, these communities that have no interaction with the outside world. And I don't mean no regular interaction. I mean no interaction. There's laws in place to stop people contacting them, because who are we to come in and be like, hey, you need to adopt our way of life, you know? There's an estimated 20 plus isolated groups in this small area alone. There's also infinitely more contacted groups. That means people that have interaction with the outside world, you know, not regular. Again, there's nothing regular about there. You're not regularly popping up the Amazon, you know, but they do have interaction. Maybe they trade, maybe they visit. Many of the tribes actively avoid outside contact to protect themselves. And that's their community, their culture, their religious, spiritual practices. But also, they have no immunity to common diseases. This is why when explorers went to the Americas, a huge bunch of the indigenous population died from smallpox and from the cold and stuff, because these things that we have developed over centuries, a bit of an immunity to, they might make us very ill. Sometimes they can be fatal, but on the whole, most of us just suffer for a little bit and then we recover. The isolation helps, like I said, preserve the culture, the language, the way of life, and their actual lives. So there's a whole network of laws designated to protect the indigenous territories, the indigenous people. Because there's a lot of threat in the area, because you might wonder, well, who's actually regularly going into that area to threaten these communities if it's so inaccessible? But there are obviously illegal and legal logging practices, mining, in particular gold in that region. There's poaching. There's drug trafficking routes, especially around the borders. Yeah. So there is a lot of activity going on. You have a lot of armed criminal groups operating in the region. And so you get a lot of indigenous groups having their own patrol, sometimes to defend their territories. That in itself can be problematic at times. So there is protection in the form of some governance. We'll discuss how effective. But there's a group, a government group called FUNAI, which in Portuguese basically translates to Brazilian Indigenous Affairs Agency. So it's a specific government department for the indigenous groups. In this area of the Amazon, entrance is strictly controlled. Well, I say strictly controlled. In theory, you need to have permits to go into this area. But again, we're talking about an area the size of Ireland, you know, with no like clear borders or points of entry.
So it's not like, you know, a separation wall type thing where you go to like a big door and say, can I come in?
Or even like Ireland, an ocean around it. You know what I mean? So you need a permit, but I imagine if you're determined, you could very easily sneak into this giant Amazon forest section, right? And there's a policy of no contact with the isolated tribes. Now, I imagine that these poachers and so forth don't particularly want contact, but there are a lot of cases of the loggers moving groups on, you know, from their homelands. So if that's not bad enough, if you don't already feel like, yes, this area should be protected, these people should be allowed to have the contact with the outside world that they dictate themselves rather than having things imposed on them or having their landscape taken from them, et cetera, et cetera. If that's not enough to move you, then why it is important globally, so for us not living in this one small region of the Amazon, is that obviously biodiversity, this is one of the richest ecosystems on Earth. Climate regulation, so the Amazon is a carbon sink. So
We need this to sort of help stave off climate change.
Yeah.
And obviously, we are in the market of protecting Indigenous rights and sovereignty because all of these things set a precedent, which can be scary for the rest of the world. Found some interesting facts. I found it interesting. Some of the tribes, because you might wonder, how do we know about them if they're no contact and they're in such a large area? They're only known through aerial footage. Imagine you're taking aerial footage with like drones or something else, and you just see people, or habitats or whatever, or perhaps brief sightings.
But what if those people look up and they're like, what the hell is that?
Oh, no, exactly. So, I mean, they must see planes or stuff. They must know that there's other people. And we don't know because we're not contacting them, whether they contact the other contacted and uncontacted tribes,
Yeah.
But the idea is we're not going to steamroller them and come in and be like, you need to concrete your roads over, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about Bolsonaro. He was basically the Trump of Brazil. He was the president for about 4 years, 2019 to 2023, which is a really unfortunate time to have such a bad president as well. I'm going to say it, I'm all anti-Bolsonaro. And if you aren't already, then
I know a bit about him.
Bolsonaro's administration weakened protection for Indigenous people. As you can imagine, he's very right-wing and very narcissistic. He doesn't give a shit about Indigenous populations and their rights. The Indigenous Affairs Agency, again, FUNAI, was undermined and repurposed, so it was no longer able to effectively protect Indigenous communities. So they already have such a difficult job of managing this situation in such a large area, in a remote area, in the middle of a rainforest.
Goes, nah, we don't want you anymore because I'm going to do my own thing.
Yeah. And the leadership was replaced experienced staff with political appointees. So many that had military and police backgrounds, but little expertise in the area. So basically put his pals, not just in this department, but senior positions in a lot of different.
So familiar.
Right? It's almost like it's a formula for dictatorship. He created a climate of fear and intimidation within the agency. Staff, Indigenous leaders, and even prosecutors were targeted with investigations for defending Indigenous rights. So suddenly them trying to do their job, they were facing, criticism, investigations themselves. Barriers were introduced, bureaucratic barriers. So like, for example, you had to get 15-day travel approval. It just made it harder to respond to threats. So if you have to wait 15 days before you can go into an area to investigate something, it's not helpful, is it, for a sort of more emergency or urgent situation? Government halted recognition of Indigenous lands. 241 territories were still awaiting this sort of demarcation. So that was just paused indefinitely. And Bolsonaro pledged not to recognize any new Indigenous land, and he did not.
Can I just ask, did he say that the current ones that had been recognized still stood?
Yeah, because it's difficult to go back on something like
all
that.
The new ones, okay.
Yeah. He proposed laws that would make it harder for Indigenous groups to claim land in the future. So they needed to provide proof of occupation in 1988. So we're talking about like 40 years ago.
But how do you prove that
especially if you're an uncontacted tribe or one with little contact or whatever? I mean, you're basically saying in 1988, 40 years ago, you have to have been using the system that we use, and you have to provide some sort of deed or whatever.
What?
Yeah. So obviously making it impossible, basically.
Yeah.
And regulations allowed private land claims in signed Indigenous territories awaiting demarcation. So not only that, but like the areas that were still waiting to be officially declared Indigenous so that they couldn't be taken from the Indigenous populations. People were allowed to claim land within that, and sometimes that was granted. So
no.
I
didn't realize it was that bad.
Yeah. And also he reduced the cooperation and the FUNAI with other agencies, which also weakened enforcement. Just terrible, right?
Was he a businessman before he became president?
I actually don't know, but I will say he was a dickhead.
Yeah, well, I mean, he was obviously a complete dickhead. Because I just wondered if he'd a vested interest in, I know some of the stuff you're going to talk about, but I certainly don't know about a lot of it, I'm sure. But I just wondered if he made money out of certain decisions that he made.
100% he made money out of all of these decisions, I'm sure. Yeah. He's got an army background. And before we say that sounds sweet, The Brazilian army there is problematic. There was a military junta for a while, like I remember going and visiting my family when we were little, and my mom telling me, like, if a police officer or an army person comes up to you, run away. They basically had a military coup. It was a military dictatorship. They were just very corrupt and, not ideal. So yeah, can you imagine being told to run away from these people that are in authority? Not the usual message you get from your parents, is it?
No.
I'm not saying he was involved in any of that. Just for sure, he was making money off this shit, giving his mates legs up and, So illegal activity unsurprisingly surged because there was less monitoring, enforcement, and so forth. So you had more illegal logging, mining, land grabbing, poaching. There was a 137% increase in illegal activity between 2018 and 2020, the period that he was in charge. And deforestation in Indigenous areas rose by 138%. Just horrible. There was also a rise in violence against Indigenous people and defenders. Mm. So Indigenous communities were increasingly forced to self-patrol territories. So I'm trying to give you an idea of the context that this case takes place in. The overall impact was that Indigenous rights and protections were weakened across multiple levels. The legal, institutional, environmental, criminal groups became more emboldened and operated with greater impunity. Indigenous communities were feeling more vulnerable, were feeling less protected. They were more vulnerable, they were less protected, and a greater risk of violence, displacement, and so forth. If this sounds like a recipe for disaster, then you're right. It is. Because bring on 2019, the start of Bolsonaro years, but he immediately started having a negative effect on this region. I wanted to go on a little side note. This is crazy things that Bolsonaro said and did. Because if you have one key takeaway from this, it's that Bolsonaro is a dickhead, and let's try to make sure these people don't come back in again, With Trump twice, with Bolsonaro, we've had it with lots of different right-wing leaders that got in a scary way, Let's stop it happening. I remember hearing all the time about, at least Trump is honest because he was just saying all these ridiculous things. He's not honest.
He just says bullshit.
Or whatever bullshit will serve him at the time. That's not honesty. That's ignorance, that's arrogance, that's misinformation, that's manipulation. So,
people lap it up. People love it because they think it's the honest truth. And it's their own ignorance as well.
Yeah. So Bolsonaro called COVID-19 the little flu. Bear in mind, this is early days when people were dying in droves as a result. He opposed lockdowns and restrictions, prioritizing the economy.
I remember that.
And he repeatedly appeared in public without a mask during the pandemic. So it's like you could argue that, none of us knew the full extent and how there was always this balance of like lockdown and restriction versus people's livelihoods and so forth. But that's not what we're saying. This guy wouldn't even wear a mask in public. So whether or not you agree with the lockdowns or whatever, like wear a fucking mask when you go out. You're setting the example for all of the people in your country. And this was, again, pre-vaccination. So there were people dying. When he was asked about the rising death toll, though, he said, so what? He delayed vaccine procurement and cast doubt on the vaccines as well. Again, like I said, it's not just about COVID. He oversaw major increases in deforestation in the Amazon. He weakened environmental protections and enforcement agencies. There was a lot of Amazon fires as well. They increased because there was less prevention of this kind of stuff and also less ability to control the fires when they do kick off. He suggested that NGOs might be responsible for the Amazon fires without any evidence.
Right. Okay. Of course.
That's kind of dangerous saying shit like that, right? He encouraged economic exploitation of the Amazon with mining, agriculture, and so forth. He said that the Indigenous people had too much land, in quotation marks. He pledged not to designate, in quotation marks, 1 more centimeter of Indigenous territory. Again, he kept on repeating without evidence that Brazil's voting system was fraudulent because he was trying to plant some seeds.
For him failing if he wasn't elected again. Of course, exactly. It's like what Trump did.
Exactly that. Trump was like, the electronic voting, Florida, blah, blah, blah. Bolsonaro suggested he might not accept election results if he lost.
He might not.
He praised Brazil's past military dictatorship, as I was talking about, 1964 to 1985. It's not that it gets worse, it's just that it gets more. He told a female politician that she was, in quotation marks,
not worth raping.
Oh, that is awful. That is so bad. Can you imagine saying that to someone? And he's in a position of power. Like, even if he wasn't.
That shows his level of respect for half of the population.
Lack of respect, yeah.
On top of that, all of his COVID, the reason why he didn't give a shit about COVID and who it kills is because it killed vulnerable and old populations. He's probably thinking, great, get rid of those. It'll make the economy stronger. He doesn't care about the Indigenous population either. They don't contribute.
And also, presumably, they're not voting. So the people that voted him in, like, I wonder, were they like the younger ones? I mean, I don't know, because if he doesn't care about the older people, okay, he's saying that they're not contributing to the economy, but they might still be voters of him.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I don't know.
Bad.
And, you know, it's obviously a level of dissatisfaction that he's managed to manipulate. Unsurprisingly, he made repeated sexist comments throughout his career, throughout his presidency. He criticized gender equality initiatives. He said he would rather have a dead son than a gay son.
Nice. No,
he rolled back LGBTQIA plus protections. His rhetoric was entirely homophobic, unsurprisingly. He relaxed gun ownership laws, making it easier for civilians to own guns. And he aligned closely with Donald Trump.
I mean, I'm just trying to think. The only thing that could make this worse is if he said that pedophilia was no longer illegal. You know, like, he's done everything. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's ticked all those, I am a corrupt and mean fucking crazy bastard. And
so it's terrifying. Terrifying. So in 2019, soon after he was elected, Maciel Pereira dos Santos, a Brazilian Indigenous Affairs agent, so he worked for FUNAI, was in Tabatinga in the Amazonas state near the Brazil-Peru-Colombia border, so close to the area we're talking about. This is a different case. This is September 2019.
Okay.
He was shot execution style while on a motorbike in this area. The attack was carried out in broad daylight, and it came across as a targeted killing, not an act of random violence. Pereira, because we're also talking about a different Bruno Pereira.
Okay.
This Pereira worked in protecting Indigenous territories, including areas that had illegal fishing, poaching, logging, and so forth. It was known for really high levels of criminal activity and very weak enforcement. To this day, this case remains unsolved and no one has been held accountable. But it's suspected that there are links to organized environmental crime networks. So basically, someone involved in illegal fishing or poaching or logging has got rid of this agent because he's causing them problems. He's investigating too closely, et cetera, et cetera. But it highlighted the danger faced by Indigenous protection agents. And it was obviously part of a larger pattern of violence against environmental and Indigenous activists in the area. This, again, sets the context for our case that we're going to talk about. And that is the case of Dominic Dom Phillips, who was a journalist. He worked for very prominent newspapers over here in the UK, The Guardian, Financial Times, but also The Washington Post, New York Times. So lots of high-profile publications. He specialized in writing on Brazil and in particular illegal mining, deforestation, human rights issues in the Amazon, so Indigenous rights and so forth. Another sidebar for you, how big is the Amazon? Just to be clear why it's so easy to do all of these illegal activities unnoticed. Because, like, can you imagine having illegal logging of these massive trees and not being caught? Like, that just should indicate how big these areas are, right?
Yeah.
So the Amazon in total, not just the small area we're talking about, the small, in quotation marks, area that we're talking about is the size of Ireland. The Amazon itself covers 6.7 million square kilometers, which is 2.6 million square miles.
I can't kind of comprehend, but regardless of how big it is, you shouldn't be taking down anything illegally.
No, of course. But to help you visualize, that's roughly the size of the entire continental United States. So the Amazon is the size of the United States.
Oh, okay. Right. Yep.
Or twice the size of India.
Wow. Okay.
So massive. It stretches across 9 countries. It's the largest part, 60% of the Amazon is in Brazil, which is why we associate it with Brazil more probably than any of the other countries, but it's also part of the Amazon is also in Peru, Colombia, Venezuela, Ecuador, Bolivia, Guyana, Suriname, and French Guyana, which means obviously you've got the problem of it being in different jurisdictions as well. And we know how difficult that makes things in terms of law enforcement and so forth. So let's talk about the Amazon River, which is obviously one of the main waterworks that goes through it. It's around 6,400 kilometers long, and it carries more water than any other river. It accounts for 20% of all river water flowing into the oceans globally.
Wow.
I mean, on top of that, the Amazon holds about 10% of all known species on Earth, and it is about half of the world's remaining tropical rainforest. So I can't tell you how crucial this ecosystem is for the whole world. It's home to about 30 plus million people, and the Amazon on the whole has about 350 indigenous groups. And as mentioned, dozens of these groups are uncontacted tribes. So back to the case. Dom would write a lot about these illegal activities and the other threats to the Amazon, to the environment, as well as its population. Bruno Pereira was an indigenous activist and former employee of FUNAI. I'm guessing he left when it started going a bit downhill, Bolsonaro. He worked with Dom, helping him interview local residents, specifically on illegal fishing, because Dom was writing a book on the subject. Book, you say?
Book, you say?
The book is Save the Amazon by Dom and other contributors. It came out in 2026 with the byline that gives away what happens, so I'm not going to tell you that. But
I want to know this. Yeah, well, we're going to find out. This sounds so interesting.
I want to show you a picture of Dom and Bruno, though. So I'm guessing that in his research, in his work, in his writing, it was useful for Dom to have a sort of local interlocutor, not just for language issues, but also as a kind of gatekeeper to make him more acceptable to the local people.
Yeah, totally.
So they had worked before, regularly. So you've got Dom on the left and Bruno on the right. So they look like proper outdoorsy adventure-y. Dom looks like a typical English person that's gone to live in a non-English country and assimilated very well. He's got a cap, he's got a backpack, he's like familiar with the terrain. And then Bruno is a Brazilian guy who just looks very comfortable sitting on a log or a branch in a sort of forested area. Both of them look adorable. I don't know what to tell you. They were in the Javari Valley and they failed to arrive in the town of Atalaya de Norte, on the morning of the 5th of June. So members of the Union of Indigenous People of the Javari Valley, Univaya, reported this. They found out that the pair had been threatened by illegal fishermen. So it was pretty obvious early on what kind of happened, right? On the 7th of June, 2 days after they were noticed to be missing, the Amazonas police arrested a fisherman, Amarildo da Costa de Oliveira, known as Pelado. I Google translated that, and supposedly it means naked in Portuguese, Pelado.
Okay, well, Pelado sounds easier than the very long name, which...
Yeah. Pelado. He was arrested for illegal possession of ammunition, but then a Univaya activist identified him as one of the men who had kind of threatened Dom and Bruno. According to the activist, naked is what I'm going to call him, Pelado, and 4 other men chased Dom and Bruno's boat after they left a São Rafael community on the 5th of June. Apparently, this was a new boat and was reported to have 70 gallons of petrol on it, so it was valuable. So Dom and Bruno were going around and visiting people, and they were last seen being chased by Pelado and some of his friends, accomplices, whatever. And then a witness saw Pelado loading a shotgun and packing ammunition that morning. So basically, they were known to be involved in illegal fishing. Now, I just want to say there's probably a lot of illegal fishing that goes on for food, for sustenance.
Sure. Yeah, there would be.
I don't know exactly what the rules are if it's for like personal consumption. That's not what I have a problem with, to be honest. Like, unfortunately, that may cause some environmental damage. But if it's for survival, then that to me is much more acceptable, right? When we're talking about illegal fishing, we're obviously talking about illegal fishing for profit in a way that bypasses any kind of environmental care and so forth.
Love a good murder? Come visit me, Isla, at Crimley Good Books in York, your one-stop shop for crime fiction and true crime reads, as well as gifts and author events. Or browse online at crimleygoodbooks.co.uk.
I just want to go back and say that Dom was living with his wife, Alessandra Sampaio, in the northeast city of Salvador. It sounds like she's Brazilian, and that's either part of the reason why he ended up in Brazil, or because he was in Brazil, he met a Brazilian lady. Anyways, he has a life in Brazil. And a couple of days after they went missing, his wife and sister started making pleas to the authorities, as well as to the locals and to anyone basically, to speed up the search or to return them. She said on the 7th of June, Brazilian authorities, our families are in despair. Please answer the urgency of the moment with urgent actions. As I make this appeal, they have been missing for more than 30 hours, and in the forest, every second counts. Every second could be the difference between life and death. All I can do is pray that Dom and Bruno are well somewhere and unable to continue with their journey because of some mechanical problem, and that all this will end up with just being another story in their full lives of theirs. So, it's obviously a desperate situation. Both of them are very capable travelers in the Amazon. So there's something serious going on here, right? And
yeah, exactly.
As the wife said, time is of the essence here, right? There was a lot of media attention on this very quickly because, it's quite a high profile case. It's a foreigner. It's a issue that's been in the media a lot anyways. And also there's this idea that reporting should be safe, which we know is not true.
Absolutely not true.
Yeah.
Absolutely not true.
A lot of Indigenous reporters often get harmed in trying to share the struggles of their own communities or other communities that they're trying to cover. And it's often ignored. But when it's a foreign journalist, it does seem to attract more attention, which can be good or it can be bad. For example, hundreds, and I mean hundreds, of Palestinian journalists have been killed every year for the last 3 years in Gaza. And it's only when one of the journalists that was killed happened to be a Palestinian with American citizenship that it got much more attention. And obviously it should do. I'm not saying Shireen Abu Akleh didn't deserve to get the attention. She was brutally murdered, trying to report on things. She should have been safe to do so. And not only that, but her funeral was bombarded as well. It was just awful. It's just worth noting that loads of Indigenous people trying to cover their own issues in their own places suffer this fate, and we don't hear very much about it. So on the 8th of June, this is 3 days after they've gone missing, The Guardian, who Dom had written for regularly, called the government response sluggish, in quotation marks, even though the Ministry of Defense told the Committee for Protection of Journalists at the time that it had, in quotation marks, immediately employed all means necessary for the searches.
What does that mean?
Yeah, exactly. And then on the 9th of June, the state court ordered the preventative arrest of Pelado on suspicion of involvement in Dom and Bruno's disappearance. Remember, they were holding him on the ammunitions charge because they had a witness saying that he was loading up a gun. So it seemed like that was something they were holding him in on until they could, get him for...
He's allowed to have a gun though, isn't he? Because the weapons were, it was relaxed, the licenses, right?
Well, in theory.
They just maybe thought that he was involved in something, so they held him.
No, they got him for the ammunition. So I don't know whether you need to have a special permit for it or he had illegal ammunition that's not allowed. You know how some bullets are particularly brutal or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Nasty.
On the 10th of June, 5 days after he went missing, the two went missing, it was reported that Pelado, naked guy, was claiming that the police had abused him. We know that's not good. Hopefully it wasn't the case. It's possible that it was the case, allegedly. On the 14th of June, so we're nearly 9 days after the pair went missing, the police arrested Pelado's brother, Osene de Costa de Oliveira, for his alleged involvement in the case. And then the 15th of June, the news the families are waiting for and dreading arrives. Police announced that Pelado confessed the night before to killing Dom and Bruno and sinking their boat. So we have a confession. Was it a forced confession? We're not sure. Search teams were deployed to where this supposedly happened, and their remains were found.
Oh, God.
So that implies that Pallado was definitely involved for him to be able to give the precise location in that entire Amazon. Police Chief Eduardo Fontes says, "We believe that with the confession of the criminal and the place where the remains were found, it is them, Phillips and Pereira. But only forensics will be able to say this 100%. So they pretty much know it's them, but they're going to confirm it. Police said they had not ruled out the possibility that others were involved. And on the 17th of June, police confirmed that the remains were those of Dom and Bruno. Dom had been shot once in the chest and Bruno 3 times. But on the same day, the police are now saying the 2 killers acted alone. Univaya submitted in 2021 evidence of an organized crime gang operating in the area. So they're saying there is organized crime in the area. There's illegal fishing. It's a large operation. We need to monitor this. We need to get involved. We need to tear down this illegal organized crime organization. And the police and those further up are saying, no, it's just these 2 guys. That's it. We arrested them. Case solved. Blah, blah, blah. But on the 18th of June, Jefferson de Silva Lima turned himself in and confessed that he was also involved.
Why?
Yeah, I don't know, but also it's already disputing the case that the police were saying that there's only 2 involved, right? So I'm going to show you a picture of I've labeled the file, Dickheads.
Yay! I love that. Can we do that going forwards? Whenever we show anyone that we don't like, can we just give them a name like that?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like they're so much worse than dickheads. I don't know, it's not even enough. So Pallado, naked guy, is the one on the right. His brother is the one on the left. And the guy in the middle is the one that's just walked in and confessed. Lord knows why.
Weird. Why would you confess?
I don't know. And also, we don't know whether we've got the full story because it was also not immediately revealed to the public how he was involved. So you don't know whether...
I wonder if they were going to do more investigations and there was someone higher up the chain that would have been found out. And he thought, right, I want you to confess. I'll look after your family. You confess. And then...
Yeah, maybe.
Sorry, I've just been watching The Wire loads on TV, so I know exactly.
So you're basically a pro on organized crime. Yeah,
I'm a pro. So I'm thinking this is The Wire.
So on the 19th of June, the police find the sunken boat. And then on the 23rd of June, the police chief, Fontes, says, actually, maybe it is possible that there is a mastermind, meaning that there's an organized crime syndicate with a guy at the top, you know? Like he's now saying maybe it's not just these 3 guys acting independently. Because obviously they want to downplay it. They want to just say, look, case solved. We cracked the case. Everything's sorted. No problemos here. Look away, you know? On the 7th of July... this case was transferred to federal court instead of state court. So it's kind of like the system in the States, you know, because you've got your different state laws and state courts, and then you've got the federal courts, like almost more national, because it involved the protection of Indigenous populations, which fell in under federal jurisdiction. And on the 22nd of July, the 3 men were charged with murder to remain in detention until trial. Apparently, it came out at the time that the reason for the murders was because Bruno asked Dom to take a photo of the suspect's boat while he was illegally fishing.
Right, sorry. Bruno asked Dom to take a picture of the boat that the killers were on while they were illegally fishing. You could imagine that could be true. And they'd seen the camera come out and then...
Yeah, that's probably exactly what happened. They probably would have known that that's a journalist, that's a human rights activist, environmentalist activist, you know? But all of this is happening at a time when people are becoming more and more critical of Bolsonaro's environmental policies. I will say it is a bit of first world privilege to tell other countries not to exploit their resources when the UK and America and all these other countries got rich by exploiting not just their own, but other people's resources for economic growth. That's how Great Britain, you know, in quotation marks, got so wealthy compared to other countries. It's because of the empire. It's because of raping and pillaging all of Africa and all of the other colonies. So to turn around and be like, oh, you shouldn't cut down your forest when we've cut down most of our forests and most of other people's, you know, it's a bit rich, isn't it? But what we can do
in these countries is say, these are the mistakes we made. Do you want to learn from us? Maybe use us as an example that you guys can do things more sustainably, you know? But that's often not the kind of language that is used, right? And also, Bolsonaro has no interest in that. He doesn't give a shit. He's like, I'll be long gone before the world blows up. You know, I just want to make as much money until then and go to as many parties. He was also criticized for not responding fast enough to this disappearance and not giving enough of a shit about freedom of the press, indigenous populations, natural environments, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And many people and groups were worried that the suspects would become immune from punishment. It was coming out that in his different employments and as an activist, Bruno had had previous confrontations with fishermen, being threatened while he seized their illegal catches. So these people acting illegally do not like him. And that he had started carrying a gun for this reason. He'd left Funai to teach local indigenous populations how to patrol their own land. Sorry, so I assumed it was because Bolsonaro was fucking it all up, but you know, maybe he wasn't to blame for this, but also to gather geotagged photographic evidence of criminality. So he's also training other people on how to, you know, protect their land and their livelihood and everything. So he's absolutely amazing to me. So Dom was actually there to work on this book, How to Save the Amazon, which was finished by colleagues to help preserve his legacy. And apparently Dom was only killed because he was with Bruno, is what the thought was, because Bruno was the main target. People were now saying their murder was called for by a mastermind of illegal fishing network. A fourth man was arrested when he presented false documents when he was brought in for questioning about the case, but he was not charged with anything immediately. And then on the 5th of August, so this is 2 months after they went missing, like things are moving quite quickly, actually. The federal police arrest 5 more people supposedly involved in the killings.
Okay.
So does this mean that they're actually believing that maybe there's more of a larger organized crime network involved? There was no release, though, of information about how these people were involved. So then 4th of June, 2023, 3 more men were charged over the murders. Colombian national Ruben Dario da Silva Villar, known as Colombia, creative nickname, and the alleged mastermind of the killings and leader of a transnational illegal fishing network. So he was one of the people arrested. So they think they got the mastermind that they originally was saying didn't exist. Also a local fisherman, Janio Freitas de Souza. And it came out that Villar, the Colombian, was the one arrested for using false documents when brought in for questioning about the killing. He denied involvement, but while he was in prison, the authorities recorded him admitting to supplying ammunition for the murder. He's clearly involved in some way. He's saying, I didn't order the hit, but they've got him admitting that he supplied ammunition, whether knowingly or unknowingly.
Yeah, well, exactly. Like you've either got the ammunition on you or you don't. You don't see 2 guys and go, I'm going to shoot them. Let me call my ammunitions man so he can deliver it. You must have it already.
Yeah, also, you don't normally sell ammunition like here, use it for nice things, you know. It was thought by the police that Villar, the Colombian's illegal fishing network, was known to Bruno and he was monitoring it. The fisherman, de Souza, called Villar on the day to tell him about Dom and Bruno being in the area.
Oh.
So it's like, oh, that guy that's monitoring us. Oh, and he's with a journalist.
Oh, if he hadn't done that.
In August 2023, the victims' families requested a jury trial for the original 3 arrested. That's Naked Guy, his brother, and De Silva Lima. Global Witness, by the way, was saying that 3/4 of the killings of environmental activists take place in the Amazon.
Oh, wow.
That's crazy. So 3/4 of killings of environmental activists. So for start, let's acknowledge that there's a problem with environmental activists being killed and that 3/4 of these cases happen in the Amazon. So where are we several years on, right? So we've got 3 people charged with murder. Then we've got the Colombian who's also been brought in. And then we've got this local fisherman who supposedly told the Colombian, who may or may not be the head of this gang, that the journalist and the activists are in the area. Well, the families are still waiting for justice. The 3 men are still waiting for trial. They've been detained. The Oliveira brothers, Naked and his brother, and De Silva Lima, they're now claiming they acted in self-defense after Bruno shot at them. So they obviously got some legal advice that they should say, yeah, we did kill him, but it was defense, you know, self-defense.
No.
There's no date it's been set for the trial. People had predicted 2024, but obviously it didn't happen. Villar and de Souza, so the Colombian and the local fishermen, are still awaiting trial. He's also suspected of being responsible for the death of Maxiel Pereira de Santos. Remember the original guy that I told you about that was shot
on the bike?
On the bike, yeah. Whether that means directly responsible or ordering the hit. So basically, this guy can allegedly get away with murdering a government official and activists and journalists and foreigners and locals and so forth. So of course, he's incentivized to kill again for his own selfish purposes. It's believed there's an attempt to cover up elements of this murder as far up as local law enforcement and politicians. Eliseo Maruba, an Indigenous lawyer and Havari Valley activist, says this goes way beyond the people already in custody. There needs to be more investigation. So in January 2023, Lula got voted back in, and we love Lula. Okay. Sidebar, why we love Lula. This is the second time he got voted back in. My aunt, who lives in Brazil, and my uncle, who sadly passed away, they used to very actively campaign for Lula. He used to stay at their house when he was coming to the area. Basically, deforestation rates dropped significantly after he returned to power. He re-strengthened environmental enforcement agencies. He restarted recognition of Indigenous lands. He rebuilt FUNAI and re-engaged the Indigenous communities. He repositioned Brazil as a serious player in climate talks. He revived social programs with a strong emphasis on tackling hunger and inequality. He invested in healthcare and education. He recommitted to social welfare policies. He put emphasis on protecting democratic institutions, not destroying them or putting his friends in power of them.
So different, so different.
Yeah. However, he still faced criticism when he came back into power for acting slow on this particular case.
Right.
And, you know, maybe that's true. I would argue he had a lot of shit to clear up after Bolsonaro. So I don't know how it was prioritized. But to show their unhappiness, the indigenous population didn't invite Lula to the Terra Livre camp, an annual gathering of indigenous groups in Brasilia in late April 2024. This was at a time where environmental and indigenous rights activists were still receiving death threats and so forth. So there's still systematic and systemic violence in the Amazon, despite the action plans and the working groups that have been set up. There's still little change on the ground, but, you know, at least there's someone in power who is trying to make some changes. In June 2024, the Instituto Dom Phillips was launched, which is a digital platform to help preserve the rainforest. It's institutodomphillips.org.br. It's a gorgeous website, so I recommend everyone visit. So, I mean, you know, that's one positive outcome. It might be the only one. On the 17th of September 2024, the federal court dropped charges against Naked's brother, Osani de Costa de Oliveira, because of insufficient evidence of his participation. He had health issues that meant he was placed under house arrest, and prosecutors said he could still appeal. So he wasn't quite acquitted, but because of low evidence, he was transferred from max security to his house, which I think you would argue is much better. So friends and family were obviously fuming of the victims. The other two were still due to face trial. They both confessed to the crimes, unlike the brother who had his sort of sentence downgraded. So why even go to trial? I don't know if they're already confessing.
So they confessed, but they said that it wasn't them. Originally they confessed, then they said that they were shot at, but now they're confessing.
Well, they've confessed that they killed him, that they killed the two men. They just changed their story and said much later on down the line that it was self-defense. So you would have thought that would be the first thing you'd say.
Yeah, exactly.
But this brother that was allowed to go from max security to house arrest had never confessed even to killing them in self-defense. So they're going to have a trial. No one knows when. Basically, the alleged mastermind, Colombia, Villar, had a hearing scheduled for February 2026, which is a couple of months ago. I couldn't find out if that even happened or if it had been delayed. But basically, as of now, there's not a single trial that has been concluded, and I don't even think started. So
those poor families, and they were doing such good work.
I know, it's heartbreaking that they were trying to raise awareness about these issues, and those very issues is what led to their murder. Tried to look for some hopeful stuff. There was an action plan that came out of it. There's a Dom and Bruno Prize for environmental reporting and a new decree in 2025 to strengthen protection of human rights defenders. So a little bit of progress has been made. Definitely a president who's more keen on these issues and sees the importance of these issues.
but there's still a lot of gaps on the ground in terms of protection, justice, transparency, and ongoing monitoring and pressure. And law enforcement still needs to be top priority in order to ensure real change. So it's just really sad. This case touches me because I've got environmental studies background, sustainable development background, the link with Brazil, and the fact that these people largely turn a blind eye to the bigger problems because they can't be bothered, or they're benefiting from it financially, or it's too difficult.
I just feel, you've got all these people, like young people, like Rachel Corrie, for example, who you covered previously in Palestine when she was killed, who are defending the rights of other people. They were still brutally killed. But you've got all these people that want to make a difference, and there's no conclusion to those killings. And I just worry about how that affects people wanting to join the crusade, if you will, so using the wrong word, but the crusade to fight for the rights of other people.
Yeah. And also how it influences people debating whether or not to go down the criminal route.
Oh, well, exactly. Yeah. They're like, do you know what? A few of us will get arrested. Fine. Most of us won't.
Exactly. Or, if we have a problem, what's the best way to solve it? Kill them. We'll probably get away with it, if we pay off the right people, or if we, So it's just really sad. And those two people, Dom and Bruno, would have known the dangers they were facing. You know what I mean? They would have known, for example, about the agent that got killed, the Funai agent. They would have known about other environmental activists that have been threatened and so forth.
How long were they working in the region again? I know one was longer than the other.
Bruno was from the area. Dom was a regular. I mean, he was living in Brazil. Yeah. They were fairly familiar with the area. So they weren't naive to that. And despite the threat to themselves, they thought it was important enough to dedicate their lives to raising awareness about this region and the issues faced.
I wonder if their camera was ever found, because they supposedly pointed a camera to take a picture. Let's say they did that. I wonder if that was ever.
I mean, they might have done. They were, in the business of monitoring and reporting. It's just so sad and so confusing on purpose whether or not these people acted individually. But the thing is, I don't think that Dom and Bruno would give a shit about some people acting, like this low-level criminality of just a couple of people fishing illegally on their own. That wasn't what they were there for. They were researching and monitoring these larger scale operations. So if you've come to their attention, probably because you're involved in it, allegedly.
A bigger thing, yeah. What happened to the president of Brazil, the former one? What's he doing?
Yeah, he refused to admit defeat, but eventually had to. And fuck knows what he's doing now. Hopefully just living miserably, but probably basking in all of the riches that he managed to secure for himself while he was president, allegedly. Sources are The Guardian, ITV News, Al Jazeera had some good stuff on there. I looked at the Committee to Protect Journalists, also the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, Reporters Without Borders, Human Rights Watch, and of course, the Instituto Dom Phillips.
Okay. Well done, Dee. That's a really interesting one. Quite an unusual one. Very different from other things.
It's rare that we get environmental criminals and environmental murders. So I thought that was quite unusual. Like I said, I was following it really actively at the time. And so it's nice when a case spans so many years to summarize it. You know what I mean? Precisely. Yeah.
There's a lot more coming out in, I've got a couple of the books, I can't remember the titles, but there's a lot more coming out now in like climate crime, which I think is great. I think there needs to be more of it so that people are aware of what's actually happening in the world that they live in.
Do you want a palate cleanser?
Please. Is it going to be about Brazil?
Yeah.
Oh, I am not going to know anything.
Do you know what? I'm going to give you a bonus point just because.
Does it look cute?
Yes. Half a point for looking cute, half a point for guessing the topic of the quiz. Because you did it last week as well when you guessed that it would be a Birmingham quiz.
Let's do this going forward. So like when we do a quiz, if you guess the title.
Okay, well, it's actually an Amazon quiz.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. So It's called Big Trees, Bigger Drama. All right, so what color, question 1, is the Amazon River often described as? Is it crystal clear, A, bright blue, B, C, muddy brown, or D, glittery?
I'm going to say glittery. Glittery.
Brown or glittery?
Glittery.
It's muddy brown. Okay. I literally put glittery in there to help you because I thought she'll know that's a fake answer.
Well, if people are describing something, glittery.
Okay, well, you still have 1 point. Okay. Question 2. What is the flying river in Amazon terminology? Is it A, a river in the sky made of birds? B, moisture carried by the winds from the forest? C, a literal river that floods upwards? Or D, a tourist attraction?
The river that floods upwards.
No, it's moisture carried by winds from the forest.
I was going to go with the birds, so I wouldn't have got it anyway.
Yeah. 3.
I've got that one.
How much of the Amazon has already been lost to deforestation approximately? Is it 5%, 10%, 17%, or 40%?
40%.
Oof, that would be horrendous, but I'm pleased to say it's not 40%. I'm unhappy to say it's 17%.
Okay, so it's still high. Still got that 1 point.
Question 4. Why are some Amazon rivers black like the Rio Negro? Is it A, pollution, B, volcanic ash, C, decaying plant matter, or D, ink spills from squids?
Volcanic ash. Is it inks? Is it squid?
No, it's not the squid. It's decaying plant matter, yeah.
Wow, okay.
Point.
But the one, there wasn't even a question.
What's one reason the Amazon is so biodiverse? Is it A, a stable climate over millions of years? Is it B, constant earthquakes? C, lack of predators? Or D, government planning? I mean, you know it's not government planning because we just talked about how...
It's either A or C. I'm going with A.
Yay! It is! Stable climate over millions of years. Until humans came along and fucked it up. But until then, that was what allowed the biodiversity to thrive and expand and so forth. So, well done.
I got
2 points.
out of 5, and then I got
No, you've got 2 points. 2 points.
Cool. Yay. Thank you, Dee. That was so interesting. I really liked it.
Next week, you're presenting. Just kidding. It's probably me.
I might be.
And I'm super excited because I think I'm going to go a bit old-timey next week.
Oh, because I've got 2 actually I'm researching. One's an old-timey and one's a modern one. So maybe I need to get my shit together and
Nah, there's no need to get your shit together. Let's just hang out and day drink and listen to podcasts and talk about podcasts and make podcasts.
Know how you research so prolifically. I just get so distracted.
When I'm trying to procrastinate something, I'm very efficient at doing almost anything else. That's how I do it. All right. Well, sexy listeners, thank you, as always, for entertaining us. I love you.
I like you.
To be fair, I've had a few more seasons to fall in love with our listeners.
I just don't give my love so easily as Dean.
We discussed this last week. I'm a hoe.
She's a love slut.
Yeah.
She's a love slut.
All right.
Am I going to see a new tattoo next week?
Yeah, maybe. Sam says, yeah. He said he was already thinking that. So we'll see. All right. Lots of love.
I need pictures. Love you all. Bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye. Love you. Bye.
Like this episode? Want more? Come visit me, Isla, at Crimley Good Books in the heart of York. We're an independent bookshop dedicated entirely to crime. From cosy mysteries to gritty thrillers, historical whodunits to juicy true crime. We've got signed editions, special gifts, and plenty of recommendations for your next obsession. We also host a bunch of awesome author events. Can't make it in person? Visit us online at crimleygoodbooks.co.uk.